as you could tell, Rachel and I have known each other for a long time. I actually first met her when she was heading up the Women's Business Center right after I got elected governor in 1997. I went there when they got support from the Small Business Administration. And she's gone on, as many of you know, to work with the Charitable Foundation and run the Tillotson Fund, which is up in northern New Hampshire, so doing really exciting work. And I will talk about some of those initiatives much more. But I also wanted to recognize also a native Granite Stater who is now down in Washington, Stephanie Powers, who I have known even longer than Rachel. You know, New Hampshire's a small state. You get to know lots of folks who are active in the state, and Stephanie is now the Director of Workforce Development here for the Council, but she's been a long-time activist in New Hampshire. And, you know, payback is, I won't use the total quote, but Stephanie has helped me for so many years that when she called and said, "Would you come and speak to the council?" I said, "Of course I will, because I owe her." So it's very nice to be here, and I'm delighted to have a chance to talk to all of you today. I know you've had a long day, that you've heard from a wide range of speakers about the importance of building relationships with your members of Congress, and I'm sure that I will probably echo what you've heard from a lot of those folks. I know it won't surprise you to know, but you may not have thought about it in this way, that congressional offices and foundations have a very similar mission. We have different resources to offer, but as members of Congress and as community foundations, we're both charged with the responsibility to improve the lives of people in the communities that we serve. And in my first year in the Senate, and of course during my years as governor and in the state Senate in New Hampshire, I worked really hard to try and improve job creation, to work on the energy sector, to look at how we could support technology and broadband infrastructure. And as I looked at your agenda for today, that sounds a lot like what's on your agenda for this meeting. So clearly, we're working on the same issues, we're just coming at them from a different perspective. And I have to say, I know that there are people here from 32 states, I understand. How many of you are from New England, the Northeast? Maine, right? East, South, Maryland and South, okay, West, and what did I miss? Midwest.
The rest of the country.
Listen, I grew up in Missouri, so that was a little Freudian, I'm afraid. But for those of us in New England, in particular, where we have town meeting and a lot of volunteers, and in New Hampshire, where we have historically had one of the highest percentage of volunteers in the country, we're a small government state. You know, we're the live free or die state. We don't have an income or a sales tax, and we pride ourselves on being fiscally conservative. So we've tried to figure out how we can get the best bang for our public dollar. And so one of the things that we've done for a very long time is to partner with nonprofits and with the private sector to try and address the challenges that we face. And it seems to me, as we're looking now at the challenges that we face in this country, that kind of partnering is really critical to addressing our future challenges. And I've been very lucky as a state senator and then governor and now as a U.S. senator to have had in the Charitable Foundation in New Hampshire a foundation that's interested in looking at how we can partner to address the challenges faced by New Hampshire. And we've worked on projects together and legislation that I'm sure at the outset neither of us thought we would ever get involved with. And as I've been working in a variety of areas in the Senate, almost many of those efforts have involved the Charitable Foundation. They're an invaluable resource to me and to my office, and I'm sure as you think about going back to your community and your home states and think about your elected representatives, that there's an opportunity there to partner on your joint mission of trying to improve your communities. And I wanted to share a couple of examples of the partnering that we've done because I think they provide a good illustration of what opportunities are available. So I have 3 examples that I wanted to share. And the first one is an effort that I think ultimately will directly support not only some of the initiatives that I've been working on, but the work that the Charitable Foundation has been doing in New Hampshire. I'm sure you're all aware of the Serve America Act, the Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act of 2009, which has created a social innovation fund. It's to provide federal resources to grant-making organizations and nonprofits, to leverage investments from private donors and businesses. And back in December, I partnered with the Charitable Foundation to bring the head of the White House Office of Social Innovation, Sonal Shah, to New Hampshire to meet with nonprofits, with representatives from the private sector and municipal leaders to talk about this new social innovation fund and what could be done under the Serve America Act. Now, I'm sorry to say that I actually missed the event because I was here in Washington working on health care, which it seems like we're working on again. But it was a great event. It involved more than 200 leaders from communities across New Hampshire, from nonprofits, from the private sector. And they talked about ways that they could partner to address the challenges facing our communities. And one example that we heard from was from a company, a manufacturer called Hydrotherm, which is in Hanover, New Hampshire, which is where Dartmouth is, if you haven't heard of Hanover. And they had started a workforce center with the local community college. And at the center, residents are trained in advanced manufacturing, and then they're placed directly into jobs with the company. So it's been a very successful partnership. Another one involved a community college down in Manchester, our largest city, which was working with a company called Insight Technologies that makes night vision goggles. And they were thinking about using that same technology for infrared goggles that Insight uses to keep our troops safe in Iraq and Afghanistan, and to use that in thinking about how to do energy audits, which makes sense, so that they could identify where heat is escaping from buildings and homes. As we look at the amount of money that's going to be available in energy to retrofit homes and buildings for energy efficiency, that's a partnership that I think has tremendous possibility. So the Charitable Foundation was able to bring some of their key supporters into this conversation. They heard directly from Sonal Shah about the Social Innovation Fund and other efforts that they could use to invest in innovation. And I think the Charitable Foundation will continue to work, look at ways that they can apply for funding through the Innovation Fund, look at ways that we can bring the representatives from the administration back to New Hampshire to think about what the funds have been used for, and to see on the ground how it's making a difference for people. So the next example is one that involves legislation, and Rachel alluded to it when she was talking about an effort that the Charitable Foundation has had underway to address mental health for veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2001, the Charitable Foundation launched the Suicide Prevention Program with the goal of reducing suicide and suicidal behavior in the United States. Among many of the grantees who have benefited from that program is the National Association for Mental Illness in New Hampshire, or NAMI, New Hampshire. It's an organization that has now developed a nationally recognized program to deal with suicide prevention. And they did that by working directly with New Hampshire's National Guard and setting up a program in the community to help train community members to combat suicide and to recognize the signs of suicide. They came to us back in the beginning of 2010 as we were looking at the budget for the federal budget and said, this is a model that we think has real opportunity to be used across the country. So we were able to work with them, the Charitable Foundation, to get language into the Defense Authorization Bill. I'm still getting confused about the difference between authorization and appropriation. I'm just kidding, I really. Just want to make sure you're paying attention. But so we got that language into the bill so that hopefully next we can get an authorization to make sure that that program is available across the country and preventing suicides, which has been a huge issue. In 2009, we had 29 nationwide confirmed suicides among Army Guardsmen who were not on active duty. So, as I'm sure you've read, this is a growing challenge that we're facing. And here is a program that works. Because of this partnership, we were able to get language and the legislation, and hopefully now we'll be able to get funding to make it work across the country. The final example that I want to give is, again, something that Rachel alluded to when she talked about work on energy. I'm a member of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and I've worked on efforts to develop clean energy technology to reduce energy consumption, to support weatherization and other energy efficiency initiatives. And similarly, just as on your agenda today, the Charitable Foundation has been making grants to communities in New Hampshire to help retrofit their public buildings and to expand job training programs for jobs in the energy sector. So when the Department of Energy announced the opening of a competitive grant to help communities improve the energy efficiency of public buildings, the Charitable Foundation convened a group of public and private stakeholders to pursue this opportunity. Now, I think we've got a proposal now from New Hampshire that's been submitted, and it's one that has involved partnerships with the Governor's Office, with the Charitable Foundation, with 3 communities in the state, with private foundations, think tanks, and our office. We've been at the table from the very beginning, all working together. And of course, over the last several months, members of my staff have sat with the Charitable Foundation at grant planning meetings and at briefings from the Department of Energy. Recently, I organized a congressional delegation letter in support of the grant application. I've had a chance to talk to the Secretary of Energy about the application. Now, I know they have their own criteria and their own process for approving these applications, but it doesn't hurt to weigh in every way possible, as you all know, on trying to support this kind of application. And by working together, I think we put together the strongest possible application and have a great chance at getting it funded. So these are 3 different examples that we've worked on together to try and support not just the work that we've undertaken in the Senate office, but the work that the Charitable Foundation has been doing for years in New Hampshire. And I would urge you to think about the opportunities you have to partner with your member of Congress, with your senators on the initiatives that you have underway in your state and your communities. And if you've hit a roadblock on something that you're doing, trying to convene a group or trying to move an issue forward, talk to your congressional delegation, because you may be surprised at how many ways in which you can work together and how they might be able to help move an issue forward with you. At any rate, you might be able to use the conference room to meet in. So I think just to conclude as we think about the current challenges that we face in the country. They're huge challenges. They're bigger than government can do alone, bigger than foundations can do alone, bigger than the private sector can do alone. And in order to make the kind of progress that we all want to see, I think it's important